Good morning. The sun is shining. The tank is clean. The tank is clean. Over to the competition. Oh, that's so exciting. Take some videos on it if you're allowed to. I don't know how that works or if you're allowed to or whatever. Me too, Amanda, obviously. Obviously. I wish I could say that I have loaves and fishes. Hey, you know what? But it's a good deed. Nice. I think we might finish today. So it'll be a new book on Monday, which will be exciting. But obviously I'll get it uploaded, even though I know you know because you read it. But you might want to hear in the discussion, of course. I know that that's part of it, part of the whole thing, right? It's part of the whole thing. Yes, she's asleep. Yes, yes, yes. Thankfully, right? Did you guys see that I started the gasoline slime showdown with the first two that arrived yesterday? I thought it was only fair to kind of sniff test them as they arrive, you know? Morning, Isabel. Morning, Jen. Let's see, where are they? Guys, it might be the last day of this book. See you later. You'll be home. Nice. My chainsaw for Halloween is like, what do you need for Halloween, Isabella? I didn't even know you needed a chainsaw. Not that I could do anything about you needing a chainsaw. What a weird thing to say. I didn't even know you needed a chainsaw. What a strange thing for me to say. Next time I see you during the... Oh, yes, we can't wait, Anya. We can't wait. We're very excited. I just saw the unboxing of Sniff yet. No, I haven't posted it yet, Amanda. I've been posting it in pieces. So I did the unboxing, and then I did a sniff test, and then I did a touch test. We still have 2 more to go, though, so it's not like, it's not done. You know what I mean? Like, it's definitely not done, because we can't crown a winner when you only have 2 out of 4 entrants, you know, here. But I wanted to give them a fair due, you know. Yeah, you're definitely caught up. Because it gets attached to the chainsaw. Oh, scary. So scary. Too scary for me, I'm not gonna lie. I'm a happy... Actually, it's not true. I guess 2 years ago, we did have a scary costume, sort of. Sort of. Oh, we got a new follower. Hey, how are you? Welcome to Book Club. Welcome to Book Club. Happy to have you. Book Club is the best, literally. I think I'm going to paint the handle pink so it looks like that's amazing. I love that. Definitely paint the handle pink. I vote yes. I vote yes on pink handle. Always, but I'm a pink girl, you know that, so. It's not surprising I would vote yes on pink. Please do, Isabella, please do. I wish that people could, like, put a picture in the comments of a lie. Like, I understand why they don't let you do that, because, like, there's no way to moderate that fast enough if someone posted something really bad. Yeah, if you could follow me on YouTube, that would be great. But, like, I'd like to be able to see it, you know. Feels like there's something in my eye. But what? I don't know. Probably an eyelash, if I had to guess. Okay, so guys, do we think we can finish this book today? Is it this hair? Could be this hair. We might finish this book today, you guys. It'd be great if we could, if we do. Oh my gosh, look, my glasses match my hair now. Is that funny or what? Hey, Liz. Oh, the eyeballs are freaking out. Yes, always. Right, Isabella? Are my eyeballs ever not freaking out? Why do I have sensitive eyes? Ugh, so lame. So lame. I also have an owie on my hand. I don't know how I got it. Probably from packing so many boxes. I'm also mailing a bunch more supplies today. Liz, I put something really funny in Brendan's package that I hope he will catch the humor of, although he is 5. So she is 8 months old and we are going to her first pumpkin patch today. Can you believe that? She's never been to a pumpkin patch. Oh, I might have gone overboard. Oh dear. Oh, pray for me, you guys. Hold on. Okay, I survived. Yeah, first pumpkin patch. I know, I love pumpkin patches too. What I wish we had here that we don't really have here the way that we did on the East Coast is apple picking. I would love to take her to apple picking. Like I used to take all the kids that I nannied when I lived in New York because it's like a big thing on the East Coast, but we don't really have that here. So we're going to a pumpkin patch, which is great too. But before she was born, my mom bought her this really adorable little apple sweatsuit. It's like a 2-piece thing with like apples on it, and I was like, oh my god, how cute would that be to wear to an apple picking? You know what I mean? But it is what it is. Sorry you're so close to my face. I'm just fixing the tripod. Just give me a second. I forgot to put it back up yesterday. Okay, let's tighten the tripod. Let's get you guys on the tripod. Good morning, Jen. I didn't see you come in. Yeah, you should totally paint it. Okay, let me sip my coffee. Do you guys have orchards nearby? No, because we live in the city, Amanda, you know? Even the pumpkin patches are like city pumpkin patches, you know? When I lived in New York City, we used to drive out of the city to an orchard. Morning, Susan. That was so amazing. And it had like so many fun activities for the kids. A picture of it actually just came up in my time hop of my friends Tamara and Karen, who I think you guys know from when they were here visiting, and Ellen's daughter Lola, when we went to this amazing pumpkin patch. If someone reminds me, I'll post pictures of it from when Lola was little. Ellen and Lola post pictures of Lola all the time, so her face is out there for the world, so it's not private. But they had these like life-size doll houses for the kids to play in of like all different themes, and there were horses and mazes and all sorts of fun stuff. We don't really have that. It was super cool. A tractor ride, or like a hay ride, whatever you want to call it. I don't know. Anyway, it was fun. Hey, Sloth. Okay. Someone named Flat Stew just joined. Is it any relation to Flat Stanley? We have several nearby sugar hydrators. You really should do it, Amanda, because like it's so cool. We never did it when I was a kid because we don't have it here, but I took all the kids I nannied in New York to do stuff like that, and they loved it. Like you can see on their faces in the photos just how magical it was. But I had never been to one until I moved to New York. It's just not a thing here, you know? It's a bummer. Okay, so look at this. That's all we have left. That's it. Are you ready? Are we ready to read the end of this book? Probably. We have some great pumpkin patches and corn mazes here. Maybe there'll be one to see when we go up to Washington. Last year they got bored and they were, really, already? Have they just been so many times that it's like old hat now? The kids that I was taking were from Manhattan. Like, so city kids, it's like really exciting for them to get out and see stuff like that. What do you think's going on here with this? My bangs are just revolting. Yep. Oh, that's fun. Oh, who are you? Oh boy. It's because I went to a workout class with her yesterday. We went to a mommy and me workout, and I had to put my hair up so that it wouldn't get gross. But clearly, it did a number on my bangs. I'll have to like re-blow them dry or something. We went to a mommy and me workout that was hilarious. It was like a really intense workout, but like they involved the kids. It was very funny. Depending on where in Seattle. Yeah. Yeah, it's too normal for your kids who live like out in orchard looking places. But for kids who live in the city, it's very exciting. It's very exciting. Okay, chapter 28, the battle for the fairy kingdom. All right, are we ready? Strap in, folks. Here we go. Emeralda and Mother Goose paced on the grand balcony of the fairy palace. One by one, the other fairies of the fairy council appeared beside them. Xanthos was the last fairy to arrive after retrieving the others, and immediately he ran to the railing and searched the gardens below. Have Alex and Connor arrived with the other armies? He asked. All right, bye, Naisa. See you later. What do you mean with the other armies? Emeralda asked. Zanny, calm down for a second and just tell us what's going on, Mother Goose said. Xanthos turned back to the other fairies, and his flames flickered as his anxiousness grew. Alex and Connor were going to collect the armies of the other kingdoms and bring them here before the Grand Armée arrived. But it will take days for those soldiers to travel here, Violetta said. Alex was going to cast some kind of spell so that they would all arrive at the same time, Xanthos explained. What kind of spell could even do that? Skylene asked. That would take more magic than all our powers combined together, Tangerina added. Xanthos was frustrated by their lack of faith, and his flames rose. Ladies, we've trusted Alex since the beginning, and we cannot start to doubt her now. Mother Goose went to the railing and became fixated on something moving in the trees beyond the gardens. Well, I'm sure whatever spell she tried... Well, I sure hope whatever spell she tried works, because the Grand Armée is here now, she said. The fairies joined her at the railing and looked into the distance. 2,000 of the remaining Grand Armée soldiers appeared through the trees. They came from all directions and completely surrounded the gardens and the fairy palace. Soldiers positioned themselves in rows and raised their rifles. They wheeled cannons and directed them right toward the palace. At the edge of the garden, a dozen or so soldiers planted 7 tall poles into the ground and stacked piles of hay and dry twigs around the base of the poles. What on earth are they doing? Rosetta asked, and 3 carriages appeared as they were steered to the poles. Only the first carriage had horses, while the other 2 followed magically behind it. The fairies on the balcony screamed and covered their mouths as soon as they realized those were the same carriages that had been sent on the secret path. They could see the kings and queens and all the others trapped inside. The kings and queens were yanked out of the carriage and taken to the poles. Princess Hope and Princess Ash were forced out of their mother's arms and thrown into the carriage with Emeralda and Bree. Queen Cinderella and King Chance were tied to the first pole. Queen Sleeping Beauty and King Chase were tied to the second. Queen Snow White and King Chandler were tied to the third. Queen Rapunzel and Sir William were tied to the fourth, and Queen Little Bow was tied to the fifth. Jack and Goldilocks were even included, and they were tied to the 6th pole. Froggy and Red were tied to the 7th. If you would just listen to me for a second, I could explain to you that I'm not even the queen anymore, Red tried telling one of the Armée soldiers. She's the queen now. She won the election, and this is a responsibility that is hers, not mine to be publicly executed. She rapidly jerked her head in Little Bow's direction, but the soldier wasn't listening to a word she said. A handful of the Armée soldiers began drumming while the others lit torches and stood near the royals. The Fairy Council was about to witness a horrible execution. General Marquis stood at the top of the carriage center and made an announcement to all the fairies in the garden and at the palace below him. Fairies, this is your one and only opportunity to surrender to the Grand Armée, he declared. Take this opportunity and I'll spare the leaders of your world. Fail to surrender and you'll watch them die horrible deaths. Choose the first option, Red cried to the Fairy Council. The fairies living in the gardens peeked out from the plants and trees. They were horrified by what they saw, but there were too many soldiers for them to do anything.
You have until the count of 3, the general shouted. 1. The fairies in the garden looked up to the fairy council members on the balcony. They silently pleaded with them to do something, do anything. 2. The fairy council whispered amongst themselves, but no one had a solution. 3. The general shouted with a dissatisfied frown. He had been expecting the fairies to surrender, but to his surprise, they stayed on the balcony and they did nothing. Your time is up. Monsieur. The soldiers threw torches onto the pile of dried hay, and the sticks around the poles, and execution began. Many of the queens screamed. The kings yelled for help. The flames climbed higher and higher. They were seconds away from being burned at the stake unless the fairies helped them. Mother Goose, you stay here and you watch over the palace, Emeralda said. The rest of you, follow me. We will not surrender, but we will stop this before someone gets killed. Alex, please hurry, Xanthos whispered to himself, and several flashes of light appeared at the edges of the garden. Emeralda, Xanthos, Tangerina, Skyline, Rosetta, Violetta, and Coral appeared right in front of the soldiers. All the cannons and rifles were raised, waiting for the orders to fire. Emeralda lowered her hands, and the fires at the base of the pole faded. Stop putting out those flames unless you want my men to open fire on you, the general yelled. There were too many guns and cannons pointed at them for the fairies to properly shield themselves in time. If the general ordered his men to fire, there was no way that the fairies would survive this. You're an evil man, General Marquis, Emeralda called back to him. And unfortunately for you, you've attempted to dominate a world that does not tolerate the wicked. We may not be able to stop your armée from taking our kingdom today, but you will be stopped. You will not win this war. This world will not let you. This world does not want you here. You untie these men and women at once and admit your failure with dignity, or suffer the consequences when the other armies arrive. The Grand Armée soldiers looked around the fairy garden nervously, but the general's attitude was not affected in the slightest. Emeralda's warning only made him angrier. He had been given so many ultimatums that he could not tolerate one more. Fire at will, he told his men. The army loaded their cannons and they cocked their rifles. The garden buzzed with a panic as the observing fairies feared the fairy council were about to be murdered right in front of their eyes. And suddenly a bright light filled the sky as a shooting star appeared. It caught everyone's attention, especially that of the general and the armée soldiers. They had never seen anything like it in their world, and neither had anyone in the fairy tale world. It was too bright to be an average star, and it grew bigger and bigger as it traveled closer and closer to the fairy kingdom. Take over, the general ordered his men, and he dove off the carriage. All the General Grand Armée soldiers fell to the ground and covered their heads. Oh, sorry, take cover, not take over. That's an important distinction, Sasha. The fairy council and the fairies in the garden stayed still as they stared up at the star in amazement. They knew that this was an act of magic. Alex and Connor had arrived. The star hit the center of the fairy gardens with such a strong impact that it caused a massive breeze to sweep through the plants and extinguish the flames growing around the poles. Once the breeze faded and the dust lifted, the fairy council could see Alex and Connor aboard Lester in the center of the gardens, and they were surrounded by the armies of the Charming Kingdom, the Bo Peep Republic, the Eastern Kingdom, the Northern Kingdom, the Corner Kingdom, and the Great Trovlin Lake. The twins' spell had worked. It was one of the most spectacular things that anyone in the fairy kingdom had ever witnessed. Everyone looked around in astonishment, especially the incoming soldiers. Only seconds before, they had just been in their own kingdoms. That was one heck of a spell, Alex, Connor said, and he was still a little dizzy from the journey himself. Alex looked around their new surroundings with a big smile, and it spread across her face. We did it, Connor. We brought the armies here, she said, and she gave her brother a giant hug. It looks like the Grand Armée beat us, though, he pointed up ahead of them. All the pride in their accomplishments drained away when they saw the Fairy Council standing in front of the Grand Armée at the edge of the gardens. To their absolute horror, they saw the armée had captured the kings and queens and their friends too, and they felt sick to their stomach. They have everyone from the secret path, Connor shrieked. How's that possible? Alex gasped. I haven't seen you in a while and she's so big. Oh my gosh, I know, right? Isn't that crazy, Kimberly? She got so big. I don't know why it's not letting me unfilter that. Oh, there it is. Okay. I don't know why it filtered that, Kimberly, but yes, she's huge now. It's crazy. Let's see. where was I? The army soldiers quickly got to their feet and aimed their rifles and cannons, not just at the Fairy Council, but everyone in the surrounding gardens. I think that's a mystery we're going to have to save for later, Connor said. Will you two come up with a plan and take cover? I'll hold them off for as long as I can, Emeralda yelled at the twins over her shoulder. Fire! General Marquis demanded as he got to his feet. Kill them all. Emeralda raised her hand, and the gardens and the palace were surrounded with a thick sheet of emerald light. She acted as a temporary force field against the firing cannons and rifles. It took every last bit of Emeralda's strength to just conjure this. Hurry, Emeralda grunted. I can't hold them like this for very long. Alex couldn't think. She was in a state of shock knowing that one of their own had told the Grand Armée about the secret path. Connor didn't wait to consult with his sister. He jumped off Lester's back and began instructing the soldiers and the fairies around them. They had to strategize as quickly as possible. All right, men, I know I'm half your age and half your size, but you have to listen to me, he shouted. I want all of you to line the edges of the gardens and don't let the Grand Armée through. The soldiers from the Northern Kingdom will guard the north side with Skylene. The Charming Kingdom army will protect the south side with Xanthos. The Eastern Kingdom army will protect the east side with Tangerina, and the Corner Kingdom army will take the west side with the soldiers of the Bo Peep Republic. We cannot let them get into the Fairy Palace. The armies were hesitant to take orders from a 14-year-old boy. Hey, what? Did I stutter? Connor asked. You heard the boy, Sir Lambton said, coming to Connor's rescue. Let's surround the gardens. The armies followed Lambton's lead and separated into multiple directions Connor had instructed. Connor felt a tug on his shirt and he turned around and saw Queen Trollbella standing behind him. What about us, Butter Boy? She asked and batted her eyelashes. What do you want the Travelin' army to do? Trollbella? Who invited you to this war? Connor asked hysterically. I couldn't stay home while my Travellins came and had all the fun, so I joined my own army, she said, and then she pulled him down closer to whisper into his ear. I also couldn't let my poor Gator go to war by himself. He would miss me just too much. Trollbella blew a kiss to Gator, who stood a few feet away, and he gulped. The relationship he had never agreed with had gotten way out of hand. Connor eyed the anxious Travelin' army around him and thought of the perfect assignment. Hey, Rosette, Violetta, Coral, and he called to the remaining fairies. Before the Elf Empire was attacked, they agreed to help us. We have more than enough men here, but since they didn't arrive with us, I assume that means they're still fighting the Grand Armée in their own territory. I want the three of you to take as many Travelins as possible up to the Elf Empire, and you have to help them. Rosette couldn't stop herself from shaking her head at his request. You want us to help the elves? But that would be... They would be outraged if we showed up. They can file a complaint later, Connor said. We've got to get rid of all these guys no matter how many bridges we burn. Rosette, Coral, and Violetta shrugged and agreed to the task. All right, Travelins, everyone grab hands and hold tightly, Coral instructed, and the Travelin army joined hands and formed 3 groups, each one around a fairy. They slowly disappeared into the sparkling clouds of colorful dust as they traveled to the Elf Empire. Trollbella had joined hands with them too, but Connor grabbed her and Gator out of the group before they disappeared with the others. Not you, Trollbella, Connor said. I want you and Gator and the remaining Travelins to wait by the Fairy Palace. It's going to be the safest there. Trollbella looked at him like this was the sweetest thing that anyone had ever done for him. Even during war, my safety is your biggest concern, she said. I feel your love like a warm blanket over my body, Butter Boy. Yeah, whatever. Just go. Connor pushed her and Gator toward the palace. Everyone take cover, Emeralda screamed. She couldn't hold off the bullets and the cannons anymore, and she collapsed to her knees. The sheet of emerald light faded as quickly as it had appeared. The armies of the Happily Ever After Assembly took cover behind the trees and boulders as they moved to their positions between the Grand Armée and the gardens. Connor jumped back onto Lester, and with one large flap of his wings, Lester flew the twins to Emeralda's side. Alex pointed her wand at the soldiers, shooting at them, and their rifles turned into large snakes and wrapped around their hands. Ooh. Emeralda was so exhausted that she could barely stand. The twins helped her to her feet and placed her on Lester's back. Lester, take Emeralda to the fairy palace, Alex said, and the gander squawked and took off with the green fairy draped across his back. Connor looked around the gardens and saw that most of the armies had made it to their assigned posts. Okay, now what do we do? Alex asked her brother. We'll get the royals and our friends to safety, Connor said, and the twins ran toward the front of the gardens where the carriages and poles had been placed. Kill them, the general demanded as the twins charged toward them. But sir, they're just children, Colonel Robert said. If they want to fight like men, they can die like men, the general said. Now fire. The Grand Armée soldiers around him, guarding the captive royals, pointed their rifles directly at the twins. Alex raised her wand and waved it toward their feet. Vines like leafy nets shot out of the ground and pulled the general and his men to the earth. They struggled against the vines, but Alex knew that they couldn't hold them down for long. Good job, Alex, Froggy said. Nice one, Jack said. Untie me first, Red cried. And Alex pointed her wand at her brother's palm, and a long, shiny silver sword appeared in his hand. He used the sword to slice open the ropes binding Froggy and Red's hands together first. As Connor cut the ropes, Alex stood guard. Several Grand Armée soldiers ran to the general's aid, and Alex swished her wand through the air at them. Their rifles were transformed into long stem roses that pricked their fingers before they could shoot. Jack, Goldilocks whispered to her husband, who was tied up next to her. Yes, my love? I have something that I need to tell you, and now might be the only chance that I can get. This might be the worst predicament we've been in yet, but there's no need for a goodbye, Jack said. No, that's not it, Goldilocks said. It's what I've been keeping from you since the secret path. Jack, I'm pregnant. As if the world had suddenly been paused, Jack lost all sense of sound and thought. All he could see was his beautiful wife beside him, and all he could think about was the beautiful news that she had shared with him. What? Jack said with an enormous smile. Do you mean it? Goldilocks smiled and happily nodded. Yes. Does it make you happy? Jack laughed, and his eyes filled with tears. Even though we just barely survived an execution, and war is all around us, you've just made me the happiest man in the entire world, he said. And Connor ran to Jack and Goldilocks next and sliced the ropes from around their hands and feet. You two look way too happy to be in the middle of a war right now, he said, and he stared at them oddly. Alex, do you mind supplying us with hardware? Goldilocks asked, and she and Jack held out their empty hands. Alex flicked her wand, and each of them was supplied with a sword and an axe. We'll finish untying the royals, and you two kids get to safety, Jack told the twins, and he gestured to the carriage behind them where Bree and Emmerich were trapped inside. The carriage door had been locked, but Connor sliced it open with his sword in one strike. He was impressing himself with all this sword business. Connor, it's really good to see you. Bree threw her arms around his neck. Are you guys all right? Connor asked his friends. Besides jumping out of our skin, we're fine, Emmerich said with large eyes. He was holding Princess Ash in his arms, and Bree helped Princess Hope out of the carriage after her. Connor whistled for Lester, and the goose returned from the palace in a matter of seconds. Lester, take these four to the palace too. Make sure that they get inside safely. They mean a lot to me. Lester saluted him with the tip of his wing and crouched down so that Bree and Emmerich could climb aboard his back. Aren't you coming? Bree asked Connor. I'll be there soon. He winked at her. But don't worry. Impossible, she said. It made Connor feel like $1,000,000, but he knew that this was no time to be sentimental. He nodded at Lester, and the goose took off toward the palace with his friends before Bree could see him blush again. Bree and Emmerich held on tight to the little princesses as they flew. Connor watched them go until he saw them land safely on the grand balcony in the distance. Sounds of gunfire and cannons came less and less as the Grand Armée began running out of bullets and cannonballs. Most of the French soldiers tossed their firearms aside and charged toward the gardens with their swords. The happily ever after Assembly's armies ran out from the trees and boulders, shielding themselves, and fought against them. The echoes of gunfire were replaced with the clashing of swords. A real fight had begun. Jack and Goldilocks sliced through the ropes binding the kings and queens to the poles. Little Bo was the last one freed, but being saved seemed like the last thing on her mind. She searched the rows of the Grand Armée soldiers surrounding the gardens as if she had lost someone in the crowd. Once Jack cut through the ropes around her wrist, she ran straight to the gardens with no explanation of where she was going. Come back! It's really not safe out there, Froggy yelled to her. We should have kept her tied up, Red said. I think she might be in shock, Froggy said. Come on, dear, we've got to catch her before she gets herself killed. Do we have to, or is it just like the right thing to do? Red asked with a snide look. But before she could argue any more, Froggy had pulled Red into the garden with him, determined to save the new queen. Cinderella and Sleeping Beauty ran to the carriage that their daughters had been placed in, and they were alarmed to see that they were not there any more. "Where are the girls?" Cinderella asked desperately, looking around the trees. "Don't worry, I sent them with my friends back to the palace," Connor said. "They're safe." "Oh, thanks, stars," Sleeping Beauty said, and placed a hand on Cinderella's shoulders. Their posture sank almost a foot, knowing that their daughters were safe. "We should escort the kings and queens back to the palace too," Goldilocks suggested.
No, we want to stay and help our armies fight. We meant it,
Snow White insisted, and all the kings and queens eagerly nodded along with her. "Your Majesties, with all due respect, this is an actual war. A few roadside lessons with large sticks is no match for what we're about to fight tonight," Jack said, and Rapunzel quickly turned to Connor. "Was it true about our people fighting off the Grand Armée at home?" she asked him, and the question gained the royals' attention. "We heard the soldiers talking about it when we were taken prisoner, but is it true?" "Yeah," Connor told them. "You should be really proud of your citizens. Like, they kind of rock." The kings and queens looked at one another, and the same confident smirks appeared on their faces. "Then I have no plan to seek refuge," Chance told the group. "If our people can be so brave, then so can we." The general and the soldiers lying on the ground started breaking through the vines that were holding them. Alex waved her wand and more vines grew, but there wasn't time for Jack and Goldilocks or the twins to argue with the royals. All right, well, we'll lead our own little fleet into battle then," Goldilocks said, "but everyone follow closely behind us and watch each other's backs." "Don't go unprotected," Alex pointed her wand at each of them, and swords and shields appeared in their hands. "I never thought that I would say this, but, let's fight," Cinderella said, raising her sword into the air. The other kings and queens did the same, and Jack and Goldilocks led them into the gardens to fight alongside their armies. Connor looked around the gardens. The happily ever after Assembly's armies were now fighting the Grand Armée soldiers all over the garden. It was hard to tell which soldier belonged to which kingdom, but they were doing well holding the enemy back. Still, the Troblins at the front step of the palace looked very worried as the battle crept toward them. "We should get to the palace and we should help the Troblins," Connor said. "I agree," Alex nodded, but something suddenly distracted her. A persistent beating noise was coming from somewhere close behind her. "Alex, help me," a familiar voice called, and Alex followed the sound and found Rook. He had been locked in one of the carriages. Her heart dropped and she immediately went to free him. "Rook? What are you doing here?" Alex asked. "How did you get inside a carriage?" Before she could finish asking the question, it suddenly dawned on her. Other than the fairies and her brother, Rook was the only person who had witnessed the kings and the queens being sent down the secret path. "Alex, please let me out," Rook pleaded, but all the color drained from Alex's face and she did not move. Her hand had been a second away from unlatching the lock. "It was you," she gasped. "You told the general about the secret path?" Although she knew there was no other possible explanation, Alex prayed she was wrong. She wished for the first time in history that there could be an alternative version to the truth. But Rook didn't even try to deny it. "Yeah, it was me, but I didn't have a choice." She burst into tears and her heart broke into pieces. He was the person she thought that she could depend on for anything. She had never allowed someone so deep into her heart before. The joy she had and thought was evolving into love was just the foreshadowing of a stab in the back. "I can't believe this," she sobbed. "I trusted you, Rook. I trusted you." Tears formed in Rook's eyes, seeing her so hurt. "Alex, I never meant to betray you. You have to listen to me. My father was so hurt. I told the general where the secret path was so that my dad could get help. And please, you have to let me out. There's something the general's planning and I have to tell you about." "How am I supposed to trust you now?" Alex asked. "Alex, behind you," Connor shouted, and Alex turned around and saw a dozen Grand Armée soldiers sneaking up behind her. Half of them cut the general and his man free from the vines. The other half came at the twins with their weapons raised. Without thinking, Alex took her heartbreak out on the soldiers charging at her. She cracked her wand like a whip, and a burst of white light sent the soldiers flying into the air. Connor was just as terrified as he was impressed. "Alex?" he said meekly. "Sorry, I don't know what came over me," Alex said breathlessly. I just hurt all those men." "It's all right, Alex," Connor said, and he cautiously approached his sister. "They were about to do the same to you." Alex's eyes darted around the gardens. In a matter of seconds, she had completely lost sight of who she was. The anger and the heartbreak consuming her had turned her into another person entirely. The soldiers finished cutting the vines and around the general and his men. "Let's get to the palace now," Connor said. "Alex, please let me out," Rook pleaded, but freeing him was the last thing that Alex wanted to do. She pointed her wand at the carriage door and 5 more latches appeared. "No, Alex," Rook said, "don't do this. I have to tell you about— I never want to see you again," she told him. And Connor ran up to his sister and grabbed her arm. They dashed into the gardens ahead and disappeared from Rook's view. General Marquis got to his feet and brushed off the vines. He looked at the battle around him and his nostrils flared. His men were horribly outnumbered, and it was only a matter of minutes before the Grande Armée would be defeated entirely. "Colonel Rambert," he cried out. "Yes, General," Rambert said, running up to him. "It's time we start phase 2 of our plan," the general ordered. "Get the masked man and bring the dragon here at once. It is time we finish this war." The thought of the dragon surfacing sent shivers down Rambert's spine. "Yes, sir," he said anyway. The twins zigzagged through the gardens, headed for the palace. Alex was crying so hard that she couldn't run anymore, and she fell behind in a giant patch of daisies. Connor knelt down beside her, and she buried her face in his shoulder. "I'm assuming that Rook was more than a friend," Connor said, and he wiped his sister's tears with the corner of his shirt. "Oh, Connor, I feel so stupid," she said. "This is all my fault. I let my heart get in the way of my head, and it almost got all of our friends killed." Hey, he said. "Everything's okay. We got to them, and everyone is safe. Everyone is, well, as safe as possible, that is." "I feel like a piece of glass that's been stepped on," Alex cried. "I feel so broken inside. I don't know how to be myself anymore. Now I understand why Esmea was the way she was. You saw what I did to those soldiers. I'm no better than she was." Connor pulled his sister up so that he could look her directly in the eye. "Alex, you gotta stop talking like that," he said. "You're not gonna let one stupid boy who needs a haircut change who you are. Do you understand me? The Alex I know would kick herself before even saying something like that. Esmea was a whiny, narcissistic wench, and you'll never be like her no matter what happens to you. Now, you're gonna snap out of it, and we're gonna go help our friends win this war, okay?" Alex sat up and she nodded slowly. "All right," she said. "Good. Now let's get to the palace, and we're gonna help the Troblins." He helped his sister to her feet, and they continued through the gardens. Everywhere they looked, they saw the battle was persisting, but from the look of it, the happily ever after assembly was winning. They saw 7 Grande Armée soldiers surrounding Skylene with their swords exposed. Just as they went in for the kill, Skylene spun her hands above her head, and the water from a nearby pond jetted at the soldiers like an enormous fire hose. Soldiers chased Tangerina through the gardens and cornered her against a tall hedge. They raised their rifles at her, and she raised her hands toward them. 1,000 angry bees flew out of her sleeves, and the beehive attacked the men. They fell to the ground as the bees stung them over and over and over again. A smirk appeared on Tangerina's face. This was almost therapeutic for her. Cannons were aimed at Xanthos and the charming army fighting alongside him. Small balls of fire grew in Xanthos' hands, and he threw them at the cannons, causing them to explode before they could be set off. The men around him cheered, and one burned himself when he tried to pat Xanthos on the back. The fairies who lived in the gardens did their part, too. Fairies of all sizes pulled the soldiers' pants down or stole their hats as they wandered around the gardens. Okay, that's really funny. Fairies are known for being mischievous, but pulling the pants down of an army to distract them is pretty great. Some fairies even enchanted giant plants in the gardens and grabbed the soldiers with their leaves and held them tightly against their stems. The twins saw Goldilocks and the queens go back as they fought off a group of Frenchmen circling them. The soldiers were cocky and laughed at the women challenging them. "We'll do that trick I taught you in the Northern Kingdom meadow. On 3, Goldilocks instructed all the women. 1, 2, 3, and the women dove to the ground and somersaulted into the soldiers, knocking them down. 2 soldiers scuttled to their feet, but Cinderella and Snow White tripped them using Rapunzel's hair. "Well done, Your Majesty," Sir Lambton called across the gardens. "Thank you, Sir Lambton," Cinderella called back, and Sir Lambton was battling his own group of the Grand Armee's soldiers with Jack and the other kings. The Charming brothers were competitive, seeing which of them could knock down the most soldiers to the ground as they counted each man they disarmed. "That's 16 for Chandler, 14 for Chance, and 20 for me," Chase declared. Jack hit the ground and kicked a soldier's legs out from under him. "Nice try, boys," Jack teased, "but that was 50th for me." Mother Goose flew through the air on Lester's back. She couldn't stay cooped up at the palace any longer, and she had decided to join the fight. "All right, Lester, just like the time we narrowly escaped those kamikaze pilots during World War II, she instructed the gander. And the goose stretched out his wings and spun into the air like a fighter jet. Mother Goose held a basket full of empty bottles of bubbly that she has been saving, and she threw them at the Grand Armée soldiers as they flew over them. Yeah, competition for sure helps. Cannons were aimed at her, but Mother Goose snapped her fingers, and the cannonballs were transformed into big, soapy bubbles. One of the cannons fired at Mother Goose went astray and blasted a hole in the side of the carriage that Rook was locked in. Had he been just a few inches to the left, he would have lost his life. But instead, Rook climbed through the hole in the carriage and rolled onto the ground. He ran into the woods away from the battle zone. He had tried to warn Alex, but she wouldn't listen. The fairies were no match for what was coming their way. Alex and Connor were a few yards from the steps of the fairy palace when they saw Little Bo run past them. She was followed closely by Froggy and Red and didn't show any signs of stopping. "Your Highness," Froggy called after her. "Your elected Highness," Red corrected him. "Little Bo, please stop running," Froggy pleaded, and Alex and Connor chased after their friends, Little Bo sprinting just as determinedly as ever. "What is going on?" Alex asked them. "Isn't it obvious? Little Bo Peep has lost her sheep and she doesn't know where to find them," Red yelled back at them. "That's not funny, Red," Froggy reprimanded. "And by sheep, I mean her mind. She won't stop running," Red said. And Little Bo frantically raced through the gardens on a search for someone or something. She scanned row after row of the Grand Armee's soldiers, and once she realized whoever she was looking for wasn't among them, she would dart across the garden toward another row. "Where are you?" Little Bo said to herself as she ran. Froggy and Red were starting to lose energy as they slowed down. Little Bo's pace never slowed, and she broke free of the group trailing her and ran further into the garden. "It's no use," Froggy said, and he stopped running. She won't stop running or listen to reason." Red and the twins caught up to him. Connor glanced back at the palace, and behind him he saw a cluster of Grand Armée soldiers had snuck through the gardens and were now battling the Troblins on the front steps. Troll Bella sat on the steps just behind Gator and cheered him on as he fought off a soldier. "Go, Gator, go! Go, Gator, go!" she chanted happily and clapped along like she was at a sporting event. "Get him with your sword! Get him with your sword!" "Oh no," Connor said. "I have a really bad feeling about this." And Connor bolted to the Troblin army's aid, but didn't get there fast enough. Gator was too small to fight off the soldiers alone, and he lost his balance. The soldier stabbed Gator in the stomach, and he fell to the ground. "Gator!" Trollbella screamed. "No!" Connor yelled, and he lunged toward the soldier with his sword. The soldier was much stronger than Connor, and he nearly suffered the same fate. Alex pointed her wand at the soldier dueling her brother, and a bright red blast erupted from the tip and hit him in the chest. The soldier flew into the air into the other Grand Armée soldiers who were retreating in fear. Trollbella placed Gator's head in her lap while he took his last breaths. "Don't leave me, Gator," Trollbella said with tears spilling from her big eyes. "Trollbella," Gator said, looking up at her. "Before I go, I just need to tell you. You want to marry me?" "I know," Trollbella cried hysterically. "Yes, Gator, I want to get married too." Gator was shocked that the Troll Queen had interrupted his dying words. It wasn't what he had intended to say, but the little troll died before he could say another word. Trollbella rocked him in her arms, and tears rolled off her face and onto his. "Come back, Gator. Please come back," she cried. And Alex, Froggy, and Red joined Connor and the Troblins on the front steps of the palace. They all stared quietly at the sad Troll Queen. "No wars without its casualties, I'm afraid," Froggy said. And as the twins looked around the gardens, they saw more and more of the Grand Armee's soldiers retreating into the woods. Xanthos appeared beside them, followed by Tangerina and Skyline. "The Grand Armée has fled from the South Gardens," he told the twins. They've left the east side as well, Tangerina said.
And they retreated from the north and west also,
Skyline added. Xanthos looked sadly to the ground. Many of our men were lost, but I do think it's safe to say that this battle is over. Rosette appeared from the Elf Empire with good news to share as well. It was a bit of a mess when we arrived there, but the soldiers and the ogres accompanying the Grand Armée fled into the dwarf forest, she told them. The Empire's tree is severely damaged, and a lot of the elves did lose their homes, but Empress Elvina is safe. Violetta and Coral stayed behind to help them clean up. That is good to hear, Alex said. We're in about the same shape here. Soon the armies gathered alongside their kings and queens. They made their way from the gardens and regrouped with the others in front of the palace. Mother Goose and Lester landed next to the twins, and Jack and Goldilocks joined them too. Every man, woman, troll, goblin, and fairy looked exhausted, but underlying pride was felt among them. They had fought off the Grand Armée together. Connor walked through the crowd and headed to the center of the gardens. Connor, where are you going? Alex asked. I'm going to end this, he said. And he walked until he was halfway between the happily ever after Assembly's armies at the front of the palace and the general and his men at the edge of the gardens. Only a couple dozen Grand Armée soldiers remained with the general, and each looked more exhausted than the last. They leaned up against the carriages and the poles and one another. They were completely out of bullets and cannonballs, and most of them had lost their swords. General Marquis was the only one who seemed to have any life left in him. He stood as tall and as spiteful as ever, as if he still thought there was a chance that the Grand Armée could win this. This war's over, Connor shouted at the general and his men. It's time to surrender, General, before even one more life is lost. A menacing smile grew on the general's face. The Grand Armée will never surrender, he said. And Connor threw his sword to the ground to further prove his point. The Grand Armée's gone, he said. You and your men were trapped in the portal for 200 years. There's no French Empire for you to go home to. Napoleon is dead. You and your men aren't fighting for anything anymore. The Grand Armée soldiers whispered to one another. Was this true? Had they really lost all sense of time in the portal? The general held his stoic face and laughed at Connor. You stupid, pathetic, ignorant little boy, Marquis said. Do you insult my intelligence by trying to fool me with your lies? I did not travel all this way to be defeated. This war has only just begun. A thunderous pulsing vibrated through the ground like a massive heartbeat. Connor looked at the ground and saw his sword quivering as if something gigantic was headed their way. The tremor grew with every beat. The fairy palace began shaking as if the kingdom was being rattled by an earthquake. Smoke filled the sky above the treetops in the distance. A horrible screeching noise erupted through the air. Everyone standing at the palace covered their ears from the dreadful sound. Oh no. Alex's face went pale. It can't be, Mother Goose faintly whispered to herself. The happily ever after assembly watched in horror as the silhouette of a gargantuan creature appeared above the trees. The rumors of the egg were true. A dragon had risen in the land of stories. Dun dun dun.
I need a sip of coffee, but then we'll keep going because she's still asleep. I'm just gonna move this over here so I don't have to keep blocking her face.
Well, things have gone up and down in that chapter, I would say. We had some good news and we got some bad news. We had some wins and we lost some travelings. But we will continue on. Chapter 29 is called The Dragon Awakes. The dragon emerged from the trees and landed on the edge of the fairy gardens. He was almost as tall as the fairy palace itself. Red scales covered his body, and a forked tongue slipped in and out of his sharp teeth. He had 2 horns and sharp spikes covering his head and traveled back down his spine. 2 large wings grew out of the dragon's back, and a long tail whipped around behind him. Smoke continuously floated out of his enormous nostrils as if they were the exhaust pipes of a steam engine. Alex and Connor could never have imagined a creature so big. There wasn't a dinosaur or a monster that they had ever read about that could compare to the beast that was coming toward them. The dragon arched his back and roared at the happily ever after assembly. It was so loud that many of the windows shattered. All the fairies in the gardens ran or flew to the trees beyond the gardens to avoid being trampled by this creature. General Marquis laughed hysterically at the frightened fairies fleeing their homes. Connor grabbed his sword from the ground and joined his sister and the men and women at the front of the palace. Mother Goose, what do we do? He asked, and everyone turned to her. Why is everyone looking at me? I've never killed a dragon before, she said. Weren't you and Grandma some of the fairies who hunted them during the Dragon Age? Alex asked, trying her best not to panic. I just wrestled the smaller ones, Mother Goose admitted. Your grandmother was the one who knew how to slay them. Connor rubbed his fingers through his hair. Okay, everyone, think. There's got to be a way to kill this thing. General Marquis could feel their anxiety all the way across the gardens. He enjoyed seeing how helpless his new pet made them feel and forced them to wallow in it for a little longer before ordering the dragon to attack. The masked man appeared through the trees just below the dragon and had never looked so happy. He gazed up at the dragon as if he were looking at the embodiment of his life's work. He had waited his whole life to possess an actual dragon, and it was bigger and better than he ever could have imagined. Unfortunately for the general, the masked man had more control over the dragon than he realized. That's enough waiting, the general shouted. Send the dragon to attack the fairy palace. I want to watch it burn. The masked man turned his head sharply to the general. No, he said. The general rotated his whole body to face him. No one had ever defied him so bluntly before. What did you say? The general asked him. I said, no, Jacques, the masked man said, and he walked toward the general, but the dragon stayed right where he was. There was something very different about the masked man. He didn't seem as frail or as odd as he usually did. Having possession of the dragon made him stand taller and more confidently. He didn't have to please anyone or anything. You work for me, General Marquis shouted. I've taken a lot of orders from you recently, but I've had enough of it, he barked at the general. The masked man burst into laughter. Now comes the part when I tell you the truth, General, he said. From the minute I saw you and your men storm into the prison, you started working for me. I've waited a long time for someone like you to come my way, someone as power-hungry as me, but who was blinded by determination and could be easily manipulated. This whole time you thought I was working for you, when you were actually giving me exactly what I wanted. Thank you for your services, General Marquis, but you're no longer valuable to my cause. The masked man was the only person who had ever deceived him. For the first time, the general of the Grand Armée looked afraid. "Do you stand there? Seize this man," the general demanded, but his soldiers stayed still. In this moment, the man with the dragon was the one that they didn't want to cross. Wise choice, the masked man said to the soldiers. Goodbye, General. And he opened his hand, and the soldiers discovered that he had kept the shells of the dragon egg there. He clutched them very tightly. He raised his hand toward General Marquis, and the dragon jerked his head in this direction. The dragon took 2 steps closer to him, and the general tried to run away. No! General Marquis screamed, and the dragon took a deep breath and exhaled a long, powerful, fiery geyser from his lungs. The geyser hit the general, and he was consumed by its vicious flames. When the dragon stopped, the ground beneath the general had been scorched black, and Marquis was gone. What just happened? Connor shrieked. Ah, crap. The masked man, he's got the dragon's eggshell, Mother Goose exclaimed. When a dragon is born, it develops its sight and assumes whoever it sees first when its eggshell is its mother. I mean, whoever's holding the pieces of the eggshell, they become the dragon's master. The masked man is in control of the dragon. Oh, great, Connor said. Just more good news. The masked man raised the eggshell pieces toward the fairy palace. Kill them, he instructed the creature, and he took a step forward. Suddenly, little Bo Peep emerged from the gardens and pushed herself between the dragon and the palace. Wait, little Bo screamed. You don't have to do this. The masked man dropped his hands, and the dragon stopped. After searching the Grand Armée soldiers for hours, little Bo had finally found the masked man. She slowly walked toward him with tears running down her face. I know your life has been difficult and unfair, and you've been tossed aside by your own blood, but I also know that there's a loving and caring man under that mask somewhere, she said. That's the man I fell in love with. This is your chance to show the rest of the world that you're not conniving and revenge-seeking lunatic that they think you are. For my sake, please show them that the man I love is still in there so that we can be together. Don't ruin the world just because the world has ruined you. The others watched her with bated breath. They felt their hearts pounding out of their chests. Her words meant something to him? Did they? Did the masked man love her enough to call off the monster? If the masked man's face hadn't been covered, they would have seen a very conflicted expression surface as he thought about what Little Bo said. But he raised the eggshells toward the palace again. Kill them all, the masked man shouted. Little Bo's pale skin went even whiter. Tears stopped rolling down her cheeks and she stopped breathing altogether. She stared at the masked man in a daze and clutched the left side of her chest. Despite her heartfelt appeal, the man she loved more than anything else in the world didn't care if she lived or died. There was no one else to live for, so Little Bo collapsed onto the ground and became very still. Sir Lambton and Xanthos ran to her and carried her back to the others. They laid her down on the steps and Alex and Connor leaned beside her. Connor checked her pulse. She's dead, he gasped. The women covered their mouths and the men removed their hats at the news. Even Red was upset to hear this, and she buried her face in Froggy's shoulder. Alex pulled Little Bo's necklace out from the top of her dress and inspected the tiny heart-shaped stone at the end of the chain and saw that a crack had formed across it. Little Bo Peep had died of a broken heart. The dragon slowly crept toward the fairy palace. He scorched the gardens beside him with a fiery breath as he went. Alex couldn't stand and wait around like a sitting duck for another second. Her grandmother was the only living person who knew how to defeat a dragon, and as long as she was still alive, there was a chance that she could give them an answer. Alex ran up the front steps and into the fairy palace, praying that her grandmother could give them a solution before all was lost. Hey, Alex, where are you? Connor said, but he was distracted before he could finish his statement. Look, Goldilocks yelled, and a herd of unicorns emerged from the forest behind the dragon and encircled the enormous creature, preventing the beast from reaching the palace. The herd was led by Rook, who rode Cornelius at the front of the charge. He had returned just in time. The dragon was agitated by the unexpected obstacle. Destroy them and get to the palace, the masked man ordered. The unicorns stabbed their horns into the dragon's feet, and he roared in pain. The dragon picked the unicorns up with his front claws and threw them into the forest in the distance. He kicked Cornelius, and he was sent soaring into the gardens with Rook on his back. The dragon grew impatient and scorched the remaining unicorns with his breath. They had only slowed him down. Thankfully, they did buy Alex a little bit of time. Inside the palace, Alex raced into the chambers of the fairy godmother and fell to her knees at her grandmother's bedside. Even though the fairy tale world was in the middle of the greatest crisis it had ever faced, the fairy godmother slept peacefully as if she hadn't a care in the world. Grandma, I need you to wake up, Alex begged. There's a dragon outside and I don't know how to stop it. The dragon's roars shook the chambers, and Alex buried her face into her grandmother's mattress and sound passed. Grandma, I know you think I'm ready to be the fairy godmother, but I'm not. I'm really not, she cried. How to defeat a dragon is only just one of many things I still need you to teach me. If there's even just a little magic left in you, I need you to wake up because we need you now more than ever. Alex listened for a sound different from the chaos outside, but she didn't hear one. She waited for a whole minute, but nothing came. She wiped her tears on the mattress and looked up at her sleeping grandmother. But her grandmother was gone. Grandma? Alex asked in astonishment, and she looked around her chambers. Grandma? She glanced at the nightstand, and she saw that the wand was missing too. The fairy godmother had left the room without making a sound. Once the dragon had dealt with the unicorns, he sped toward the palace. His wings spread out on either side as he went in for an attack. What are we going to do now? Jack asked the men and women all around him, but Connor was the only one to respond. Pray, he said. Mother Goose took a giant swig from her flask and walked toward the oncoming dragon. I'm gonna distract it. The rest of you run for the forest. You can't. You'll get crushed, Connor pleaded, and Mother Goose looked back at him. Hey, it's all right, Sea Dog, she said with sad eyes. It's my fault this even happened in the first place. It's time I took a little bit of responsibility. Before she could take another step forward, the dragon roared violently, and the sound knocked everyone to their knees. As they helped one another to their feet, they heard a familiar voice behind them. Step aside, Goose. Slaying dragons was never your cup of tea. A woman with a soft and sweet voice said, and everyone turned and looked up to the top of the fairy palace's front steps, and they could not believe their eyes. Grandma? Connor panted. The fairy godmother had appeared wearing nothing but her nightgown. Do forgive my appearance. I only woke just a few moments ago and I didn't have time to dress for the occasion, she apologized. And the dragon stopped in his tracks when he saw the fairy godmother. She was the only thing that intimidated him in the slightest. It was as if his DNA knew to fear her. He roared at her, knocking everyone back to the ground except for the fairy godmother. She walked barefoot down the steps and into the garden toward the gigantic beast with her wand ready. Alex ran out of the palace and joined Connor at the front steps. She gasped and dropped to a seated position when she saw what the others were witnessing. The sight was unbelievable. Their tiny grandmother gingerly walked toward a massive fire-breathing dragon as if she were taking a trip to the grocery store. Grandma, wait, you cannot do this, Connor yelled. Grandma, you're sick. Please come back, Alex cried after her. But their grandmother looked at them with a twinkle in her eye. Don't worry, children. I still have a little bit of magic left inside me, and I couldn't think of a better way to use it, she said. This is going to be fun. The men and women, soldiers and fairies, kings and queens, trolls and goblins, watched in disbelief as the old woman walked closer to the dragon. The giant creature screeched at the fairy godmother and blew a fiery geyser in her direction. She blocked it with her wand, and the fire was sent out in all directions except at the palace behind her. You've picked the wrong yard to mess in, the fairy godmother said to the dragon. Don't just sit there. Destroy her, the masked man demanded from the other side of the gardens, and the dragon blew his strongest gust of fiery breath at the old woman, but she blocked every one of them with her wand. The twins clutched each other, terrified that they were about to see their grandmother get hurt. But, on the contrary, their grandmother just laughed as the dragon attempted to harm her. The key to slaying a dragon is to always remember that you're much smarter and more powerful than he is, the fairy godmother called to the men and women behind her. He might seem scary, but he's really nothing but a large, winged reptile with horrible breath. A long silvery trail erupted from the tip of the fairy godmother's wand. She happily waved her wand in the air as if she were conducting an orchestra, and a trail slashed through the air like a giant whip. The trail grew longer and longer by the second, and the dragon jumped back and forth trying to avoid it, but eventually the trail was so long that the dragon tangled himself in it when trying to fly free. The fairy godmother had the dragon exactly where she wanted him. She cracked her wand like a whip again, and the trail that was wrapped around the dragon grew brighter and brighter. The others covered their eyes at the blinding sight, and the dragon burst into clumps of ash. No, the masked man screamed, and the sound echoed through the entire kingdom. He turned back to the Grand Army soldiers with infuriated eyes. It was a face more frightening than any the general had ever made. Don't just stand there gawking at me, you idiots. It's time to get out of this kingdom immediately. None of the soldiers questioned the masked man's leadership. They hurried behind him and escaped into the forest behind the fairies before the fairies could come after them. The fairy godmother took a deep and satisfied breath and closed her eyes. Her knees gave way and she slowly fell to the ground, landing softly on her back. Grandma! The twins shouted in unison, and they ran to her side and propped her head up in their laps. Grandma, are you all right? Connor asked. Are you hurt? Alex asked, and their grandmother smiled warmly up at them. I thought I would go out with a bang, she said weakly. I knew there was a reason I hadn't passed on yet. I'm so glad you got to see your granny in action before I did pass. Grandma, that was the coolest thing I have ever seen anyone do in my entire life, Connor said. You're so amazing, Grandma, Alex said, but please don't leave us. Leave? Their grandmother said, and she made a funny face at them. Who said anything about leaving, darling? Aren't you dying? Connor asked her softly. Isn't that why you wouldn't get out of bed? The fairy godmother put her hand on her grandchildren's faces. Yes, children, I am dying, she said. But what the fairies didn't explain is that fairies never really die. When a fairy's time is up, his or her soul simply returns to magic. They become the very substance that helps the fairies make the world a better place. Even when I'm gone, I will still be with you both. Every time you wave a wand or cast a spell or use an enchantment, I'll be watching from afar with enough pride to light the night sky. Tears spilled out of the twins' eyes and they rolled down their faces. Their grandmother's voice gradually became softer and softer as she spoke. They weren't sure if it was true or if she was just trying to make them feel better. but they knew that it would only be a few moments before she was gone. "We love you so much, Grandma," Alex said. "I don't know what our lives would have been like without you." "Boring, that's for sure," Connor joked. "You're the most magical grandmother a couple of kids ever could have asked for. Like, literally. I think you pretty much have that title in the bag." The twins saw their grandmother's trademark smile that wrinkled her eyes and appeared one last time on her face. It was the same smile as their dad's. It was their favorite smile in the whole world. "I do love you, children," she said. "Take care of each other, and remember, I'll never be further away than a thought." The fairy godmother's eyes closed for the final time. Her body became weightless in their hands and transformed into 100 bright, sparkling lights. The lights floated through the air and joined the starry night sky above them. Alex and Connor had never seen anything like it. Even as she passed away, their grandmother found a way to leave the twins fascinated. Perhaps she had indeed returned to magic after all. The twins hugged each other and cried in one another's arms as the sun rose above them. The fairy godmother was gone, but the fairy kingdom had lived to see another day. Oh, Ray, Nikki, you guys got here just in time for the last chapter. There's a little more, and someone is still asleep. We're going to read this last chapter so that we can start fresh on Monday with the next book. Chapter 30 is called Returning to Magic. I know. I can't wait to see it, Isabella. Thank you, Ray. I know, Jen. I know. Just wait. This chapter, if I remember correctly, this chapter wrecked me last time. So get ready for some tears because I think this killed me, but I'm not sure if this is the one I'm thinking of. Returning to Magic. A beautiful ceremony was held the following night in what was left of the fairy gardens. It celebrated the lives lost during the war and was attended by all the fairies in the fairy kingdom and all the citizens who wished to join from the neighboring kingdoms. Special tributes were played to Gator, Queen Little Bo Peep, and the fairy godmother. Plaques were placed in the garden bearing Little Poe and Gator's names next to a giant statue of the fairy godmother erected on the front steps of the fairy palace. Connor was pleased to see that it was an exact likeness of his grandmother. It wasn't made taller or more muscular like the memorial he had envisioned for himself. The ceremony reminded the twins of their father's funeral, but this time, thankfully, the attention wasn't all on them. They shared this loss with the entire fairy tale world, and they were able to mourn with everyone they knew. The incredible impact that their grandmother had left on the land of stories could be seen in the eyes of all the people who attended the ceremony. Gratitude radiated from their faces as much as grief. Everywhere Alex went, people bowed to her and referred to her as the fairy godmother. It was going to take time for her to get used to this. Alex asked the kings and queens to stay an extra day so she could hold her first official happily ever after assembly meeting as fairy godmother, the day after the ceremony. The war was over, but there were still so many battles ahead, both private and public. Bree and Emmerich asked Connor and Alex if they could stay for the ceremony, but they agreed with the twins that they should go home as soon as it was over. They didn't want their parents to worry any more than they already had. "I'm gonna be so grounded when I get home," Bree laughed. "Too bad my parents would never believe the truth. If they did, they might go easier on me." "What are you gonna tell them?" Connor asked her, and Bree just shrugged. That I fell in love with a circus clown and I followed him all around Europe?" Bree shrugged. "We know it can happen." "Would you mind letting my mom and my stepdad know where I am?" Connor said. "They probably know already, sort of. I mean, Alex and I aren't really strangers to going missing every now and then." "Sure," Bree said. "Maybe they can talk to my parents and soften the blow of my punishment. They can tell them what a horrible influence you are, or something like that." A playful smile appeared on Emmerich's face. "I bet all the kids in Fusen are so worried about me," he said. "I'm going to tell them I was kidnapped by secret agents, which, honestly, isn't that far from the truth." "What are you going to tell your mom and dad?" Bree asked. "Well, it's just me and Mum," Emmerich said. "I never knew my dad, but when my mother was a little girl, my grandfather used to tell her about the strange things she'd seen in Neuschwanstein Castle. She probably wouldn't be too surprised if I told her the truth. I'll still have to do the dishes for months regardless of where I was, but it was worth it. Even though my life was put in danger several times, I've never had so much fun." "I agree," Bree said. "This certainly has been the adventure of my life." That night, Connor, Bree, and Emmerich followed Mother Goose to one of the tallest towers of the fairy palace. The circular room was very dusty, and cobwebs stretched between the walls. Clearly, no one had been up here in a very long time. An empty archway was the only thing standing between them and the tower. This was one of the original portals we used to use to travel into the other world during the heyday of fairy tales, Mother Goose told them. Yeah, man, those were the good old days. Connor put his arms around Bree and Emmerich. You know, now that you two have seen the fairy tale world, it's your responsibility to help us keep fairy tales alive in the other world, he said. Both of them were excited about the task. Having this responsibility made them feel like they were taking a piece of land and stories back with them. I think I'm up for the challenge, Bree said. Me too, Emmerich said. And Mother Goose pulled the lever on the wall, and transparent blue curtain appeared in the doorway. It was bright, and on the other side of the curtain, Connor recognized the zone of light between the two worlds. Yep, looks like that old portal's back in action, Mother Goose declared. Where does it lead to? Emmerich asked. I don't know, somewhere in the Netherlands, Mother Goose said, but then she second-guessed herself. Or maybe it was Nevada? Oh well, you just ask someone once you get there. Let's make this quick. I'm not getting any younger despite the potions that I drink. Connor hugged his friends a bittersweet goodbye. Thank you both so much for helping me get here, he said. I promise to visit you once we get everything straightened out here. I will miss you, Herr Bailey, Emmerich said. He didn't want to leave. Yeah, take care, bud, Connor said. Emmerich was the first one to step through the curtain, and he disappeared into the other world. Bree lingered by the archway before following him. Just saying goodbye didn't seem good enough. I'll see you around, was all she could muster. Yeah, definitely, Connor said, and he looked at the tower as he blushed. Bree kissed his cheek and stepped toward the portal. Connor was feeling a little daring since he knew he wouldn't be seeing her again anytime soon, so he decided to send her off with a secret. Hey, Bree, he said, before you go, there's something I wanted to tell you. Oh yeah, what's that? She asked, and Connor scrunched his whole face as he told her, after a lot of self-reflection, I've come to the conclusion that I do have a crush on you, he admitted, and Bree laughed. I know you do, she said. And by the way, I have a crush on you too, she said. Then she winked at him and quickly stepped through the curtain before either of them could say another word. Connor's mouth dropped open, and he felt like his heart was going to flutter right out of his chest. He was happy and confused all at the same time. They both liked each other. What happened next? It was an electrifying yet mystery-inducing misery because Connor didn't know what to do with himself. Mother Goose turned the lever and faced Connor with a very serious expression in her eyes. See, dog, I gotta talk to you. I know, Connor said bashfully. I don't know how to talk to girls, but in my defense, Bree's the first girl that I've ever met that even understood me whatsoever. Mother Goose stared at him peculiarly. Puppy love has nothing to do with what I'm about to say, she said. It's about the portal in Neuschwanstein Castle that the three of you traveled through. There was a minor detail I forgot to mention when I was telling you about it. What's that? He asked, trying to think of what she could possibly be referring to. We were stuck in it for a couple of days, but once the portal opened, we got here pretty smoothly. That's the thing. You weren't meant to, Mother Goose explained. I told the Brothers Grimm to lead the Grand Armée into the Bavarian portal because I had bewitched it, but honestly, I had enchanted it so only someone with magical blood could ever travel through it easily. Any mortal traveling through it would be stuck inside it for 200 years. That's how we trapped the Grand Armée. You would have traveled there without a hitch, but if Bree and Emmerich were mortal, they'd still be in that portal right now. Connor's eyes blinked rapidly. He wrapped his head around what she was saying. Wait, I'm sorry. Are you telling me that Bree and Emmerich have magic in their blood? That's the only explanation, she said, although I don't even know how it's possible. Connor thought for a moment, and an answer surfaced in his mind based on all the information he had acquired on this journey. Wait a second. The lion statue told us that you transformed and transferred some of your blood into Wilhelm Grimm so that he could play the panpipe and access the portal, he said. That's right, she said. Then it's possible that Bree and Emmerich are descendants of Wilhelm Grimm, he asked, and Mother Goose nodded and pondered this conclusion. Anything is possible, she said. It was mind-boggling. Magic always worked in mysterious ways, but it was astonishing that Connor had somehow crossed paths with two people out of the billion in the other world who had magic in their blood. Bree and Emmerich must have been destined from birth to find the land of stories, just as Alex and Connor were. Okay, But if they're not related to Wilhelm Grimm, I wonder how else magic could become a part of their DNA, Mother Goose said. Someone else may have slipped between the dimensions undetected. But who? Alex walked through the halls of the fairy palace alone. It had been a very long and sad day, and she desperately wanted to find a place where she could be by herself. Regardless of her quest, Alex was faced with unwanted company when someone popped up from behind a pillar and startled her. "Hey, Alex," Rook said. He was the last person she wanted to see. "What are you doing here?" "I snuck into the palace to see you," he told her, and he adjusted his right arm, which was in a sling. He'd received an injury fighting the dragon with the unicorns. "I heard about you and the unicorns," Alex said. "How's Cornelius?" "He's fine," Rook said. "He chipped his horn in the fall, but you can't really tell." "It was very brave of you, and I am thankful," she said. "There's a witch named Hegeta in the dwarf forest. Take your father to her. Tell her I sent you, and she'll heal both of your wounds, but I can't help you anymore. I meant what I said in the gardens. I don't want to see you ever again." She continued down the hall, and Rook limped after her. Apparently, he had sprained his ankle in the fall, too, but Alex didn't trust him enough to believe that his injuries were genuine. "I know I broke your trust, but I did it to save my father and the other villagers," Rook said. "You have to understand that I had no choice." Alex quickly turned back to him. "I know. I'll understand that someday," she said. "But there's always a choice, as the fairy godmother says. I'll always have to make the most of difficult choices. Who to help, who not to help, whose life to save, whose life not to save, which kingdom to protect, and which kingdom not to protect. These are the terrible decisions that I have to make, but it's a burden I shouldn't expect you to carry with me. I can't blame you for making choices I wouldn't make, but I can't share the responsibility of this life with you. This is my life." "So that's it then?" Rook said sadly. "After all the wonderful talks and walks, we shared one bump in the road comes along and we call it quits?" "It's not a bump. It's a fork in the road," Alex said. "We'll never be able to stay on the same path, and it wouldn't be fair to either of us. I'm sorry." She walked briskly down the hall from him so that he couldn't keep up. Rook called after her, but Alex didn't look back. "I'll change your mind one day, Alex," he cried. "That's a promise." Alex pushed through the two heavy doors and walked into the Hall of Dreams. She knew she would find privacy there. She sat down on the invisible floor and looked out at the bright orbs representing people's hopes and dreams. Unfortunately, unless the room wasn't as full as it had been when her grandmother showed it to her, many people had been disheartened during the last few days. Their hopes and dreams were all casualties of war. A knock came from the other side of the room. "I said I didn't want to see you anymore," Alex shouted. Connor poked his head in. "Geez, sorry." "No, wait, Connor, sorry, I'm sorry," she apologized. I thought you were someone else." Connor had come to find his sister and tell her what he had learned about Bree and Emmerich, but he was so captivated by the Hall of Dreams that he completely forgot what he was going to say. He shut the door behind him and he sat down next to her. "What is this place?" Connor asked. "It's called the Hall of Dreams," Alex said. "It keeps a record of every hope and dream of every person and creature in the world." "Neat," he said. "It's like a big fairy database." "It used to be much fuller. I'm afraid the war has discouraged a lot of people and they stopped believing," she said. "It's going to be my job to restore that now before... It's going to be my job to restore it now that Grandma's gone." "You mean it's our job?" Connor said. "I'm not going anywhere." And Alex looked at him in confusion. "What do you mean you're not going anywhere? What about the other world?" "It's going to still be there waiting for me," Connor said, "but right now my job's going to be here with you. I know you're worried about being the fairy godmother, so I'm going to stay with you until you're comfortable enough to do it on your own. Besides, I don't want to go home until Mom and Bob have forgotten about how much money I withdrew from that credit card." Alex smiled. It was the sweetest thing her brother could do for her. "Do you mean it?" She wasn't even going to pretend for a second that she wasn't pleased and relieved to hear this. "Yeah, absolutely I mean it," Connor said. "We're sort of unstoppable when we're together, and there's still a lot of work to be done here." "All right," she said, "but on one condition." Connor was afraid to ask. What's that?" "You have to be my apprentice," she said. "Every fairy godmother needs one." And Connor grunted. "Aw, come on, Alex, let's not get carried away," he moaned. "Just think about it, Connor," she said excitedly. "I can teach you spells, how to do enchantments, how to grant wishes, and if anything should ever happen to me, the land of stories would fall into your hands just as it should." He rolled his eyes and made a face like it was the worst idea he had ever heard. "Fine," he said, "but I will not be called the next fairy godmother. You can choose whatever title you like." She was so excited by the idea that she didn't care what he wanted to be called. Connor thought about it for a moment. "I want to be called, Head Fairy Dude." She smiled and nodded. I could live with that, she said. Connor Bailey, head fairy dude. It has a nice ring to it.
Wow, she's been sleeping a really long time, you guys. I can't even believe it.
Okay, so that wasn't, oh, right as I said that, she woke up. That wasn't the chapter that I thought of. Obviously, that chapter did not make us cry. But we do have one more chapter. Are you gonna sleep or do you want to be awake for this chapter? Hi, my angel. Hi. Hi. Good morning. You want to be awake for the very last chapter? Do you want to go in your playpen for it? You want to sit down for a second? You want to? You want to sit down? You want out? Isabella said hi to you. Yeah, you see that? Whoa, that was a big sleep, huh? You slept until 9:50. Wow, big girl. Big girl, good sleepies. Hi, Smiley Angel. Yeah. Oh, thank you, Emily. Thank you. She said my hair color is excellent. Did you see? She likes Mommy's hair. That's what she said. She said, Mommy's hair color is excellent. Yeah, you smell like sleepies. Okay, you want to go in the playpen for a second while Mommy finishes this last chapter? Hi, I'm right here. Don't worry. Hi. Hi, pretty baby. You're so smiley. Who's a happy girl with a happy brain because you got good sleep? Yeah. Okay. Are you going to let me sit here while we read this last chapter? Or are you going to make me get in the pen? Hi. Hi. You look so happy. Who's a happy girl? All right. Chapter 31 is the last chapter. And it is called The Dawning. Oh, you want to read a stack of alpacas instead? A pack of alpacas? A stack of alpacas. There's something on my glasses and it's going to drive me nuts trying to read through it. Okay. Oh, wow. That's cute. Little marks. You ready for this? Here we go. The Dawning. The following day, the entire Happily Ever After assembly gathered in the main hall of the fairy palace. All 7 fairies stood nobly by their podiums, and Mother Goose sat in her chair across from Alex, and the kings and queens stood on the floor before them. Jack, Goldilocks, and Troll Bell had also been asked to attend the meeting, although none of them knew what for. They figured that Alex had something up her sleeve. The fairy godmother's seat remained empty at the end of the hall by Alex's request. She wasn't ready for it to be moved. Every time she looked at the chair, she imagined her grandmother sitting there smiling back at her, and it inspired Alex and kept her motivated to continue her grandmother's work. All right, it looks like we're all here, Mother Goose told the room after conducting a head count. Shall the meeting proceed? Not yet, Alex said. We're still waiting for one more person to arrive. And no one but Alex knew who they were waiting for. The rest of the hall joined her as she looked upward. Their curiosity increased with every moment that passed. 2 giant swans appeared in the sky and descended into the hall. Empress Elvina rode in on one of those swans, while 2 elf soldiers escorted her on the other. The assembly exchanged wide-eyed glances as if they were looking at a ghost. The majority of them had never seen Empress Elvina in person, and the elf soldiers dismounted their swans and helped the Empress down from the other. It was the first time in hundreds of years that elves had touched fairy soil. Thank you so much for coming to our meeting, Elvina, Alex said with a cordial bow. I was very surprised to receive my invitation since I didn't fulfill our end of the agreement, the Empress said. I'm just glad that you and your elves are safe, Alex said. The Empress and her soldiers stood apart from everyone else in the hall. She was the tallest person in the room, and she glared at the other monarchs. The elves hadn't come with the intention of making friends. I just love your branches, Snow White said, trying to break the ice. Empress Elvina stared at her as if the compliment was a horrible insult. This is the sacred crown worn by every ruler of the empire since the Dragon Age, she stated as if it were obvious. Well, it's just lovely, Cinderella added. Now that everyone had finally arrived, Alex began the assembly meeting. I've called you all here today to make an announcement, Alex said. I've decided that my first act as the new fairy godmother will be to abolish the Happily Ever After assembly. The hall immediately erupted in protest. Empress Elvina was the only one not surprised by the news, and she found the others' reactions very amusing. It was the first time in a great while that the elves were in the know before the humans. Have you lost your mind? Tangerina asked. I think you need a vacation, kiddo, Mother Goose said. Xanthos tried reasoning with her. Alex, we've stood behind you on every decision you've made, but this one we cannot support. Everyone, calm down and hear me out, she said. My grandmother formed the Happily Ever After Assembly as a way of uniting the world, but the Grand Armée has proved that the world is far from being united. The war wasn't the last threat that we'll face. We have to be prepared for whatever the future may bring, and we can't do that if some of us are left out of the conversation. So today, I am founding the Happily Forever After Assembly, and I'm asking the Troblins and the Elves to join us. The hall went very quiet, but no one objected. The men and the women looked back and forth between the Troll Queen and the Elf Empress, waiting to see how they would react to the offer. You want the Troblins to join? Yes, Alex said. Your people come from a long line of horrible behavior, but you've done a wonderful job of restoring their dignity, Trollbella. However, the trolls and goblins will never respect us if we don't respect them too. I learned a very valuable lesson from two unlikely teachers over the course of this war. One was a prisoner and the other was a witch. They taught me something about every creature, being an individual. We can't punish an entire race for a mistake made by individuals. As it is as easy as it is to label large groups with reputations of their ancestors, it's not right. As we forgive the trolls and goblins, I hope that the elves can forgive the humans and fairies for the treatment that they've received from the fairies in the past. Our agreement wasn't based on forgiveness, Empress Elvina said, but it was a very gracious gesture on the fairies' part to assist us during the Grand Armée's attack, and we are grateful. If this new assembly will benefit the future generations of elves, then we will gladly join it. A smile came to Alex's face. The fairies around her were stunned as she convinced the Elf Empress to join forces with them. Are we all in agreement then? Alex asked the room. She made eye contact with every ruler and fairy in the hall, and each of them nodded. Yes, I believe we are in agreement, Emeralda announced. Let's mark today as the dawning of the Happily Forever After Assembly. The hall burst into a round of applause. Even the Elf Empress couldn't resist clapping. Trollbella was so excited by the union that she did a cartwheel. Alex secured a very promising future now for the fairy tale world. Jack cleared his throat. Excuse me, but we're still wondering why we were called here? Yes, that leads me to my second order of business, Alex said. And the majority of the criminals in the Grand Armée they fled from battle, which means more. Whoa, what are you doing, friendo? Hey, you silly girl. You can't do that. I mean, you can, but you can't. Can you sit down so mommy can read? Can you sit down while mommy's reading? You're a big girl. You want to stand up? Too early, honey. Yeah, why don't you play with your toys while mommy finishes reading? Oh my god. She just decided to just freaking stand up. My angel. You can't scare mommy while she's reading. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Okay. Woo! That was scary for mommy. Where were we? Sorry about that. Which means that more criminals are at large throughout the kingdoms than ever before, not to mention the remaining Armée soldiers that escaped. We need to work together to round them up and put them behind bars. With the Assembly's permission, I would like to ask Jack and Goldilocks to form a team to track down these criminals. You say too early. Tess was standing up on her own. Oh my gosh. Are you serious, Jillian? Yeah, hey, Kiana. Yeah, new hair. Walking at 7 months is actually insane. Was she running by the time she was like nothing, like 10 months? She's definitely doing this thing where she pulls herself up on stuff, which is normal, but she's doing the like test herself letting go thing. You know what I mean? She's like, can I stand without holding on? Maybe I can. All right, sorry, I got distracted, but you know, baby standing is distracting. Jack and Goldilocks looked at each other. You want us? Jack asked. But we are criminals. Goldilocks said. Which makes you the perfect candidates, Alex said. You think like criminals and you know where they would hide and who they would make alliances with. We're gonna have to think about it, Jack said, speaking on their behalf. Recently, we've been toying with the idea of settling down. Well, this was news to Goldilocks. When did we have that conversation? She asked her husband. I just assumed. Because he raised an eyebrow suggestively, so she knew he was thinking of their unborn child without saying it aloud. Goldilocks smiled at him and held his hand. Just because a bird builds a nest doesn't mean its wings are clipped, she said, and then she turned to Alex. We're in. Jack and I want this world to be a better place just as much as the rest of you do. Besides, it'll allow us to live our lives like we always have, except we'll be acting for the greater good instead of just ourselves. Oh, hey, you see Dada? I agree, Jack said, and they both gained a sudden interest in the future, knowing that they were bringing a child into the world. We accept your offer. All right, then I would recommend the first person you track down is that masked man, Mother Goose said. There's no limit to his ruthlessness or his greed. He tried stealing from the fairy godmother herself. I bet he's out plotting his next strike against the fairies even as we speak. She just woke up maybe like 5 minutes ago. She's in a very good mood. She slept for an hour and a half. Big sleepy girl. Look at you fast crawling across to Daddy. She was like, I have to get to him. I must. I know. She's so excited when he arrives. They could hear her squeal when you came out. She was like, hi, Dada. Oh, wow. We're almost done. We have 3 more pages, and we're done with this book. And we'll go to the farmer's market. Mother Goose, what did the masked man try to steal from the fairy godmother? Alex asked. Surely Grandma didn't have a dragon egg in her possession. Mother Goose shook her head. I'm afraid I don't know, but it was enough to get him put behind bars for life. Well, together we'll form a team and we'll track him down, Goldilocks said. Unfortunately, the masked man was much closer than any of them realized. With nothing further to discuss, Alex concluded the first Happily Forever After assembly meeting. She waved her wand and several more large swans appeared and took the kings and queens home to their own kingdoms. Alex was completely drained after meeting and desperately needed some time to rest and decompress. Rather than going back to her own chamber, she decided to go on to her grandmother's instead. Soon her grandmother's old room would become hers, and Alex wanted to spend a little time there before, so she could get used to the change. The door was already ajar when Alex got in there. That's odd, she said to herself. She hoped her things hadn't been moved into their chambers already. Alex went inside, and her grandmother's scent greeted her at the door. She was happy to see all of her grandmother's belongings were still in there. Alex gazed around the chambers at her grandmother's things, and she looked forward to going through them with her brother and wondered what they could learn about their grandmother as they searched through her spell books and organized her cabinet of potions. When Alex's eyes landed on the cabinet of potions, she was confronted with an alarming sight. All the drawers were open and had been rummaged through. Broken glass bottles covered the floor, as if someone had been searching in a hurry. The cabinet door was still swinging. Whoever it was still here. Alex raised her wand and cautiously moved through the chambers. Who's in here? She demanded. She scanned through the room, although it appeared empty, but Alex's gut told her that she wasn't alone. Alex searched every corner of the room but didn't find a soul. The only place that she hadn't looked was behind her grandmother's desk at the top of the platform in the back. Her heart beat faster and faster as she approached it. Show yourself, she ordered. This is a private room and you don't belong here. A tall and menacing figure suddenly jumped up from behind the desk. Before Alex could identify the masked man, he roared at her and shoved the desk in her direction. It toppled down the platform steps toward her and it shattered on the floor. She barely avoided it crashing onto the ground. He ran toward the door, but Alex pointed her wand at it and it slammed shut. Freeze, she yelled. Don't move or I'll blast you into next week. The masked man raised his arms with his back to her. She noticed a small blue bottle dangling from one of his hands. So you're the new fairy godmother, he said. It's nice to finally meet you. What did you steal? Alex asked. I didn't steal anything. Then what's in your hand? Something that I was owed a long time ago. The masked man snarled. Turn around, Alex ordered. The masked man slowly turned toward her face. There was something very familiar about the pale blue eyes behind his mask. She could have sworn that she had seen those eyes before. Take off that ridiculous disguise, Alex said, and she gripped her wand even tighter. You do not want me to do that, the masked man said in a playful tone. Now, she yelled, and the masked man reluctantly pulled off the sack from over his head and exposed his face for the first time in over a decade. Alex gasped and dropped her wand. She was right. They had met before. Connor, Froggy, and Red stood on the grand balcony watching the sunset over the gardens. The fairies across the lawn cleaned and restored their damaged homes from the battle.
Even more than half of the gardens were destroyed, but they're still beautiful, Red said dreamily. I would love to plant my own garden just below a balcony of my own outside of a bedroom castle. Suddenly she grew very sad and stopped herself from finishing her thought. Oh, silly me. I forgot I'm homeless now.
Have you ever thought about what you want to do now that you aren't queen anymore? Connor asked.
Besides becoming a recluse like the Snow Queen and waiting for someone to restore my throne, Red said. No, I'm afraid not. Although I do hear Queen Sleeping Beauty's in the market for a nanny.
Froggy put his arms around her. You'll come home with me to the Charming Kingdom, he said. I can't offer you a kingdom, but I can arrange for you to have a private garden all to yourself.
Red sighed at the idea. I suppose that'll have to do. It could be a lot worse. I'd rather be an evicted queen than a dead one. Poor little Bo Peep. I almost felt guilty for saying all those horrible things about her.
A carriage traveled through the garden toward the palace. They didn't pay any special attention to it until it got closer, and they saw the passenger riding inside of it. Hey, that's the third little pig, Connor said, and he pointed to the carriage.
What, that brick-obsessed runt? What's he doing here? Red said. Where's your pig? Where's Brick Piggy? Where's the Brick Pig? Where is he? He's riding through to the castle. He's right there. There he is. Oh, no. That's the wood pig. Where's the Brick Pig?
Well, anyway, this is the brick pig.
Do you have a wolf?
We have a wolf, but we also have a brick pig.
We do?
We do, somewhere. She loves the brick pig. They're buddies.
That's what.
Well, let's find out, Froggy said, and he led Red and Connor through the fairy palace, and they met the third little pig at the front steps.
Hello, Your Majesty,
the third little pig said and graciously bowed.
It's so good to see you again.
Cut to the chase, piggy. What are you doing here? Red asked, crossing her arms. He had been the bearer of bad news lately, and she wasn't looking forward to hear what he had come to say to them.
The Little Bo Peep Republic is still in mourning the tragic death of the Queen, but the new election was held yesterday afternoon, and I've come to tell you the results,
he said happily. Red could not be less interested. I wonder what baboon they chose to replace little Bo. They deserve whatever oaf they put on the throne, she said, and she stopped talking as her eyes grew so large that they took up half her face. Wait a minute. Did you just call me Your Majesty? Froggy and Connor shared an excited smile. Red's hands started shaking as she jumped up and down. Had all her dreams come true? Had her people given her back the throne? Was Red re-elected queen? Connor asked.
Yes.
Am I the baboon? Am I the oaf they deserve? She asked as she anxiously bounced around.
No, ma'am, the third little pig said. I was speaking to Prince Charlie.
Froggy turned a pale shade of green. Me? He said. I was elected.
Him?
Red said, and she was just as shocked as he was.
Yes, sir, the pig said. Congratulations, you've been elected king. Little Bo hadn't named a successor, so there wasn't time for any candidates to properly run. The citizens were just given fill-in ballots, and your name was the most written down.
Connor gave a hearty chuckle, and he patted his friend on the back. Way to go, King Froggy! Froggy was speechless. His pupils almost disappeared into his big, glossy eyes, and he turned around to look guiltily at Red. My dear, I am so sorry, he said. I feel like I've stolen something from you.
Are you kidding me? Red said. Oh, this is fantastic news. Do you know what this means?
You'll be secretly plotting my death now? Froggy asked with a gulp, and Red delightedly laughed.
No, Charlie, she said with a gigantic smile. This means that I'll be queen again. I mean, once we're married, that is.
Froggy shook his head, positive that he had misheard her. Come again? He peeped. Did you guys get engaged and not tell us? Connor asked. Not to my knowledge, Froggy said, and he stared at Red, horribly confused. Was that a proposal, my love?
If it makes me queen again, I'll do anything, Red said, throwing her arms around him. Oh, Charlie, our wedding's gonna be just beautiful. We'll have it right after your coronation in the new gardens that you planned for me at the castle. It's funny how life works out sometimes, isn't it?
Froggy glanced at Connor with a fearful look on his face. His life had just taken an unexpected and very frightening turn. The celebration was cut short when the cannon was fired in the distance. They all dove to the ground just in time to miss a cannonball flying at the front steps and into the palace, blowing it to smithereens. When the dust had cleared, Connor got to his feet and looked toward the edge of the garden. A few dozen Grand Armée soldiers left from the war were led by Colonel Rombert, and they were attacking the fairy palace. We are under attack, Connor yelled.
Again?
Red squealed. Xanthos and Skylene emerged from the palace and climbed down the destroyed steps to where Connor and the others were. What is going on? Xanthos asked. The Grand Armée and the soldiers have returned, Connor said. How many of them are there? Skylene asked. Not too many, he said. Only a couple dozen or so. The fairies looked around and across the garden as another cannonball was fired in their direction. Xanthos shot a fiery burst of light out of his finger, and the cannonball was destroyed mid-air. Skylene and I will handle this, Xanthos told Connor. Tell everyone in the palace not to panic. The fairies ran through the gardens toward the soldiers, and Connor helped Froggy and Red and the third little pig to their feet. A few dozen soldiers hardly seems large enough for a proper attack, Froggy said. I know, Connor agreed. It's more like it's got to be a distraction, right? His heart suddenly fell into the pit of his stomach. Oh no, that's exactly what this is. The masked man's back. I've got to find my sister. Connor climbed up the front steps of the palace and darted inside. He was like a fish swimming upstream against all the fairies making their way out of the palace to see what was causing the commotion. He raced up the stairs and didn't find his sister in her chambers. He tried their grandmother's room next and burst through the door. The first thing Connor noticed was the desk lying in pieces on the floor and the broken glass surrounding the potion cabinet. Alex was sitting on the steps of the platform in the back of the room. Her face was ghostly white. She panted as she stared off into space. Her wand was on the floor a few feet away from her. Something was very, very wrong. Alex, are you all right? Connor asked and ran to her side. What the heck happened in here anyway? She was trembling and didn't make eye contact with him. The masked man was in here, she stuttered. Did he hurt you? Connor asked. Alex shook her head. He stole a potion. I caught him and I made him take off my mask. And then what happened? I saw his face! Alex shrieked and tears spilled out of her eyes. What was wrong with it? Connor asked. Alex, you're scaring me. Tell me what you saw. She turned to her brother and looked him directly in the eyes. He had never seen her look so petrified. Connor, she gasped. The masked man. It was Dad. That is not the chapter I thought we were going to be reading just now. That is not what I thought it was. Remember when I started that chapter and I told you it was a sad one? That is not what I thought it was. I was wrong. I was thinking of a chapter from another book entirely. Holy crud muffins!
Oh my gosh.
That's bad. That's real bad.
The masked man, he haunts my dreams. Oh.
Well, we got a lot of reading done today, you guys. Right, Amanda? I know. You're like, what? That's crazy pants. It's crazy, huh, honey? Is that so crazy?
He's like,
Where's mommy?
I wasn't paying attention.
Peekaboo. Where's mommy? Peekaboo.
You love mommy so
Hi,
much.
my angel. Okay, thank you, Becca. Wait, you were here for this last time, Jen? Yeah. Well, we finished the book today like we said we were going to. It's crazy. We'll start the new book on Monday. Book 4, you guys. Book 4 Monday. Book 4. All right. We're going to go to the farmer's market now. Oh, this is where you came in last time, Jen? Okay, cool. Well, you get to... You know what the funny thing is, Jen? You're going to start seeing the things that I'm seeing. Like, there's something that happens later. It's not really a spoiler, but like the fact that the fairy godmother has a glass desk didn't mean anything to me the first time I read through this, but just reading it just now, I was like, oh, I know where she got that desk. And like you find out later, you know what I mean? But I didn't think of it the first time. So like, you know, rereading it, you get so much out of it. It's so good. You know, Jen, yeah. So anyway, it's pretty cool. Thank you so much, Lexi. I'm pretty happy with my hair as well. Well, shoot, now I wonder if fairy godmother knew all along, and I mean, who knows, right? We'll find out, Amanda, right? Okay, we're gonna go to the farmer's market, and we're gonna go to our very first pumpkin patch, and I'll see you all on Monday for new book. Bye, guys.